From punk rebels to hip-hop icons, the Beastie Boys in the 1980s. No other group quite captured the wild, unpredictable vibe of the 1980s like the Beastie Boys. Starting out as a scrappy punk band from New York, they evolved into one of the most surprising and influential hip-hop acts of the era. Their path through the decade wasn't just paved with rhymes and rowdy shows. It was marked by reinvention, defiance, and a mashup of subcultures that helped define a generation. Early days in punk, the early 1980s. The Beastie Boys didn't launch with rap beats or DJ scratches. They kicked off with punk noise and teenage rebellion. In 1981, a bunch of New York teens, Michael Diamond or Mike D, Adam Yauch, MCA, John Berry, and Kate Schellenbach formed a hardcore punk band. They chose the name Beastie Boys, a cheeky, rebellious label that fit their spirit. Their early sound was raw, fast, and full of fury, channeling NYC's buzzing punk scene in places like CBGB and Max's Kansas City. Their first EP, Pollywog Stew, in 1982 was a hardcore blast. Speedy guitar riffs, shouted vocals, and tracks that barely hit the 1-minute mark. They weren't selling out arenas yet, but they were crafting a clear identity. Loud, unfiltered, and always ready to poke fun at the world. That sarcastic humor stuck with them, even as their sound evolved. A new beat. Hip-hop enters the picture. In the early 80s, hip-hop was bursting out of the Bronx and spreading through NYC. Graffiti, breakdancing, DJ battles, and block parties were taking over. The Beastie Boys, surrounded by the city's melting pot of culture, were drawn in. After Berry's departure and Schellenbach's exit, the band's lineup settled into its iconic trio: Mike D, MCA, and Adam Horovitz, or Ad Rock. They started playing with rap, mixing their punk fire with cheeky rhymes. The 1983 single Cookie Puss, based on a prank call to a Carvel store, was equal parts joke and experiment, but it caught on. DJs picked it up, and suddenly the punk kids had landed in the hip-hop scene. They weren't polished rappers, but their charm was undeniable. Def Jam, Rick Rubin, and Hip Hop Takeover. Their major breakthrough came through Rick Rubin, a bold NYU student launching a label called Def Jam Recordings with Russell Simmons. Rubin was drawn to the Beastie Boys' unruly energy and believed they could blend punk edge with booming rap beats. With his production, they refined their sound, loud, playful, and completely unapologetic. Between 1984 and 1985, they toured with hip-hop legends like Run DMC, soaking up knowledge and sharpening their stage presence. They weren't just sidekicks, they were building their own identity. Backward caps, chunky chains, and obnoxious charisma that somehow worked. By 1986, they were ready to explode. Licensed to Ill, 1986, a loud statement. When Licensed to Ill dropped in late 1986, it shook the culture. With Rubin's hard-hitting production, rock samples, and hilarious over-the-top lyrics, it became the first rap album to hit #1 on Billboard tracks, like You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and Paul Revere catapulted them into superstardom. For kids in the suburbs, the Beastie Boys were their first taste of hip-hop. They weren't trying to be something they weren't. They leaned into the mayhem, turning frat boy jokes, beer-soaked behavior, and pop culture nods into a cultural moment. Their tour, legendary and wild. Giant beer cans, inflatable props, and stage dives made their concerts infamous. Critics saw frat party chaos, but fans saw freedom and fun blasted through boombox speakers. Facing backlash and finding a new direction. By the end of the 80s, the band had hit a crossroads. Fame and notoriety were theirs, but so were the labels. Many dismissed them as gimmicky or one-hit wonders. The rebellious party boy act that had launched them now felt tired, even to them. Instead of fading, they pivoted. Leaving Def Jam, they headed west to LA and teamed up with the Dust Brothers to craft something fresh. The result? Paul's Boutique, 1989, a deep, sample-rich album that critics would eventually call a hip-hop classic. At the time, though, it flopped commercially. Fans expecting another party anthem were confused. But Paul's Boutique showed how much they'd grown. No longer crashers at the hip-hop table, they became sonic experimenters, layering samples, weaving surreal lyrics, and showing off their evolving artistry. Looking back, this marked the start of a new, more innovative chapter. The Beastie Boys' 1980s legacy. By 1990, the Beastie Boys had already transformed several times. They began in punk basements, conquered MTV with hip-hop swagger, and ended the decade as underappreciated pioneers. What linked it all was their unwillingness to be boxed in. They didn't fear looking silly, flopping, or flipping the script entirely. The 1980s version of the Beastie Boys was more than just a group. They were a cultural fuse point. They showed that rap could cross races and genres, that sampling was an art, and that three wisecracking misfits could shake up music history. Their future held activism and experimentation, but their spark came from the wild ride of the 80s. Closing thoughts. In the 1980s, the Beastie Boys weren't polished. They didn't always earn critical praise, and they didn't care to play it safe. They were bold kids who stumbled from punk into hip-hop and changed both scenes along the way. In a decade about flash, reinvention, and breaking rules, their story is textbook 80s. Loud, bold, and unforgettable. They didn't just earn the right to party, they fought for the right to grow, and in doing so, they changed what a band could be.